Over 20 years ago, Subaru introduced the WRX to America. Now, this was a pretty enticing option because this was a turbocharged all-wheel drive sport compact that came standard with a 6-speed manual and was relatively affordable. Now, to introduce the all-new generation, Subaru has brought me back out to the West Coast to this lighthouse over in Point Arena, California to drive this all-new generation. Now, this model here, Subaru says, is the most comprehensive redesign they've ever done. It's now in its 5th generation because they've moved this car to the new Subaru Global platform. They've introduced a larger and more powerful 2.4-liter turbo under the hood, and on the inside, Subaru has addressed the lackluster infotainment system with a much larger 11.6-inch touchscreen. So if you guys have always been in the market for a WRX, does this all-new 2022 version live up to the hype? Stay tuned to find out. So before we talk about the all-new exterior design for the WRX, because this is a WRX, I want to first talk about the powertrain for this vehicle, because Subaru has enlarged the old 2-liter turbo engine to a 2.4-liter turbocharged flat 4. Remember, this is a boxer engine, that's what Subaru is known for. And this is essentially the same engine that we know in the Subaru Ascent, which is their 7-passenger or 8-passenger family crossover SUV. Now, Subaru says they've made extensive changes to the engine to give it more high-end power, to make it rev a little bit better, to get rid of some of the rev hang, but the numbers are 271 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Now, if you guys are keeping score here, this is only 3 more horsepower versus the old 2-liter, and it actually has the same torque from an engine that's about 25% larger in displacement. So it sounds a little bit confusing onto why Subaru didn't really give it that much more power. The turbocharged engine also pushes out around 12 pounds of boost from the turbos, so it is a rather under-stressed engine. I suspect that's why Subaru went to a larger engine, because it's going to have far more tuning capability. Subaru also says that it's freer revving, it has a flatter torque curve. We'll talk about all that, of course, when we get out into the driving scene. Now, this particular one here that I'm showing you is a 6-speed manual version. Most WRXs are actually sold with a manual. Subaru says about 85% of owners choose a manual. You can also get a new transmission. They're calling it the Subaru Performance Transmission, which is technically a CVT, although the company claims that it's been completely redesigned and they benchmarked the best dual clutches when they were thinking about this transmission. Sadly, I don't have a dual CVT model to drive for you today. The company says due to COVID, they weren't able to actually get production of the pre-production models in time for this drive, so I'll be driving that at a later date. Now, fuel economy actually did go down for this new generation. This 6-speed manual model here is rated at 19 to the city, 26 on the highway. That's a reduction of about 1 mpg. You still need to make sure to put premium gas in this car, but with standard, of course, symmetrical all-wheel drive, you should get to 60 in under 6 seconds. We'll test that out, of course, when we get into the driving scene. And even though the new WRX is larger, the new platform allowed Subaru to actually reduce the weight, but then they had to add it back in with all the additional safety tech. As this one sits, it weighs in at just over 3,300 pounds. Now, shutting the hood, let's talk a little bit about the styling of this vehicle. Now, first of all, it's instantly recognizable as a WRX because of the massive hood scoop, which Subaru says all the vents and scoops on this car are actually functional. This, of course, helps to suck in some air for the intercooler. The hood scoop itself makes this car so recognizable as a WRX. You have at the front the traditional Subaru hexagonal grille with this kind of painted gray finish with this ignition red color, which is actually new for 2022. I think it looks great. However, you're probably also noticing a couple things. First of all, you do have the Subaru Hawkeye headlights. Full LED headlights are actually standard. This one here has LED turn signals, LED low and high beams. They're swiveling adaptive headlights, and then you also have LED fog lights down there. There's also a lot of black or gray cladding, gray unpainted cladding, which we'll talk about later on as we go throughout the rest of the vehicle. From the front fascia, I think Subaru has done a good job at making this vehicle certainly look like a WRX, but also bring it on to the next generation. The company claims that their focus group that saw the styling actually likes the cladding. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Now, moving around the side profile, you'll be surprised to hear that this car doesn't share a single body panel with the Impreza sedan that I'm talking about, even though they're built off of the same global platform. Subaru claims that everything on this car is completely different, and they also made this car a lot longer versus the previous generation. At 183.8 inches long, it's nearly 3 inches longer in overall length. Its wheelbase has been extended by about an inch to around 105.6 inches long. It's also a little bit lower, but also an inch wider. So that's, of course, going to give us a much more aggressive looking stance. Now, over here at the wheels, Subaru offers a choice between a 17 or an 18-inch wheel. This limited grade that I'm showing you is technically not the top trim anymore. You have this kind of gray painted 18-inch wheel wrapped on Dunlop SP Sport Max tires. The brake rotors, you can see, look a little bit plain to me. I actually wanted Subaru to do something with the brakes, like give us painted calipers. I suspect that's going to be reserved for the STI along with Brembo brakes, which the company sadly didn't have any STI info for us today. The cladding you can see here extends onto the wheel archers. There's some functional vents here that helps to relieve pressure as the air kind of flows around the side of the vehicle. And then the side mirrors you can see aren't painted black, but they do have integrated turn signal mirrors. You have a standard size sunroof, of course. Subaru doesn't offer a pano roof on this vehicle. And then as we go along the side, there's more of that cladding around the rocker panels. I'm not sure I like the cladding here. I think it's a little bit too much, but I did notice when I was driving the car, you can't actually see the cladding from the side view mirror, so that's good. Now looking at the rear, this is where I think Subaru really messed up because I don't like the way the back end looks. Now, first of all, let's talk about the taillights because these are a combination LED taillights. The rear taillight module itself, the light actually, it's supposed to be magma inspired with this kind of jewel-like texture. It's supposed to look a little bit more aggressive. You can see the turn signal is just incandescent. The reverse light, however, is an LED. You have this black bar that kind of extends and connects the two taillight modules together. It almost looks very Honda-esque with the C-shaped LED taillights. You have this subtle rear lip spoiler here, which remember, this is a WRX. The STI, which will come sometime next year, will have the big wing supposedly, which the company hasn't talked about that yet. They're not ready to talk about that now. And this right here, you can see, we've been driving the car in some kind of muddy and wet conditions today, and you can see the black or the gray cladding here obviously is a little bit dirty, but this right here is confusing to me. The car almost looks like it's unpainted, it's unfinished back here, like the car got into an accident and they forgot to paint the rear bumper. I suspect a lot of owners are going to be painting this or wrapping this. I just don't understand all of this cladding. It's just too much. They should have kind of painted this area here and maybe lift this area over here gray, which would have, I think, looked a little bit nicer. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of this look. The quad outlet exhaust is the signature theme, of course, with the WRX. This has a new engine under the hood, so let's go ahead and fire it up so you can hear how it sounds. Typical Subaru fashion, that Boxer Flat 4 has an interesting rumble, although it's not quite as loud as I would like it to be. I suspect maybe the STI will be even louder than this. Now, opening up the trunk capacity, you can see Subaru says that they redesigned the opening here and made it wider. It's still not very large to me. I believe the new Civic Si and Hyundai Elantra N has a bigger opening trunk, but you get 12.5 cubic feet of space back here. The seats also fold down in a 60/40 manner. Surprisingly, there's a rather high lift over here. I expected this to kind of be connected to the trunk lid, so it was interesting to see this piece here. And then if you look underneath the floor here, Subaru does not give you a spare tire. Instead, you just get a fix-a-flat kit with an air compressor. So overall, the cargo capacity is fine, but keep in mind, Subaru doesn't offer a hatchback still. So on the exterior, the new WRX doesn't look all that different, especially when you look at it from the front. However, when you get inside and look at the interior, you're going to notice quite a few things. First of all, the door has a relatively solid sounding thunk. Remember, this is now finally on the global platform, which the WRX has never been on this platform before. And you can see this limited grade model that I'm showing you has Subaru Smart Key Access System key. I believe all of the trims come with this except for the base model, which is nice. Subaru tended to never give you the Smart Key Access System, but if you guys prefer that, the base still gives you that. Obviously, with the manual transmission model, you have to put the clutch in, and their start-stop button here is right behind the steering wheel. It is blocked by the wheel, so you kind of have to look over to see it when you're actually trying to start your vehicle up. Now, once you start it up, you can hear it has that typical Subaru Boxer growl. The engine from the inside doesn't really sound like too much. On the outside, it's definitely a little bit or a lot louder, so they're not kind of augmenting the sound in here, which I kind of actually like. Subaru didn't go that route like so many other competitors. Now, this limited grade model that I'm showing you has these upgraded ultra suede seats with the two-tone leather combination with the red stitching. These seats are pretty nice, but they are not the full Recaros that you get on the GT version, the new Grand Touring. I also like how there's WRX kind of embossed in the actual seat headrest here, which does look nice with the red stitching. If you guys go for the baser trims, you actually get a cloth seat. The base model has an even more plainer looking cloth, while the premium has some of that red stitching. But overall, the dash this is where Subaru really upgraded a lot of things. Now, if you guys have been in the new Legacy and in the Outback, this is going to look very familiar. This is the 11.6-inch Subaru Starlink head unit. This is now in their 4th generation. You can see there's the Subaru GPS in this car. It's a TomTom navigation system. It works just fine, although I will say The graphics on the screen do look like they're a generation behind versus some of their newer competitors. Going to the home display here, you can see there's all your usual sources. You can go through the Starlink app, and then you can see Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is standard, but it is a wired connection. When I go to the CarPlay, you can see there's what it looks like. It actually has the wider screen look, which they actually added as part of an update on the Outback and Impreza, or on the Outback and Legacy sometime early last year. This looks really nice. I think that they've done a really good job here, although I'm surprised no wireless Apple CarPlay, which would have been a nice addition. And I also think the graphics could look better. When you put the vehicle into reverse, you can see there's the backup camera, which doesn't take up the entire screen. I actually think that they should be using this real estate here. Subaru does not offer a full 360 camera on this car, which you don't necessarily need, but again, you can hear it's got the rear cross traffic alert as well, and the blind spot monitoring. That is going to be standard on this trim, which in terms of driver assistance tech, you have to go for the CVT model to get their full eyesight. The manual transmission models do not have the automatic emergency braking, but they do have the rear cross traffic alert. Now, the rest of the dash here, you can see has this soft touch injection molded plastic on the upper portion, and then some real stitching over here with some leather material, which looks nice. It even continues here onto the center console. That matches, of course, the red stitching for the 6-speed manual. In terms of the steering wheel, you can see it's a new flat bottom wheel. The wheel itself has pretty good amount of adjustability. It's a tilt and telescoping wheel. No heated wheel on this model here. The horn sounds a little bit puny, but not quite as puny as the new SI. I may have scared away those birds. The door panels, you can see soft touch injection molded plastic here on the front doors. Some imitation carbon fiber look trim that's also on the steering wheel. All the windows are one-touch automatic up-down for all four, which is nice. The window switches have a nice high-quality tactile feel. The armrest looks nice. It's got the same kind of red stitching. Over here on the center console, you can see no wireless phone charging pad on this model here. I wonder if Subaru offers that as an accessory. This area right here you can see is just barely large enough to fit my iPhone 12 Pro Max. You've got 2 USB charging ports over here. The manual on this model feels very Subaru. It's got relatively short throws. It has a nice notchy feel. The shifter itself is a little too tall for my liking, but it actually feels exactly the same as the previous generation. Those of you who like to do J turns are going to really appreciate the manual pull cable style handbrake. The CVT models will include an electronic parking brake. There's a nice little storage area right here where you can perfectly fit the key for this car. You can put some loose change. 2 cup holders over here, and then the armrest pad, you can see, I actually think it's a little bit low. I would prefer it if Subaru made this a little bit higher and allowed it to adjust forward. It sadly doesn't do any of that stuff. It is nicely padded. When you open it up, you can see there's plenty of disinfecting wipes because we're in COVID. The storage area here is relatively good size. There's a 12-volt power outlet in there. And then over here, you can see no storage over here, but you do have a decent sized glove compartment where it's a bin style. It's damped, but not lined with felt. And then above me, you can see standard size sunroof. Subaru doesn't offer the larger pano roof. And then you have just some incandescent lighting here in the cabin, and then this kind of woven material here on the headliner. So overall, the interior has most of the tech that you'd expect. I really love this new screen, huge upgrade from the 7-inch display in the old model. But again, this isn't the most luxurious. It isn't the most tech heavy. I think the new Civic Si has an interior that's a little bit nicer, along with the Hyundai Elantra N with its wall of 10-inch displays. So Subaru claims that the WRX has the youngest median buyer age of any other vehicle in this segment, which means the backseat is going to be an important consideration factor because this is most likely your only vehicle. And because they were able to stretch the wheelbase by about 1 inch for this new generation, they gave us essentially another inch of legroom. You get 36.5 inches of legroom back here, which is not impressive and best in class, but it is certainly usable. At 5'7", I can kind of get back here and get pretty comfortable. There is a center tunnel here, obviously, for the all-wheel drive system. This does eat into your space for the middle passenger, but you can see they've added a couple of tech features here, like 2 USB charging ports. It looks like you could get this car with heated back seats, but I don't have a GT model here to show you guys to confirm that. Sadly, no rear seat air vents, which would have been nice. You have 2 rear seat map pockets or storage pockets, and then the materials back here are hard touch plastic, but you do have some nice leather on the door panels, which is nice. If you fold down this armrest here, you can see there is 2 cup holders and a nice armrest here to actually allow 2 people to get comfortable. Above me, you can see the sunroof does eat in a little bit of the space, but sadly, there is no LED lighting in the back either. So I wish that Subaru had given us all LED lighting, but I'll have to wait until I sit inside a GT to confirm that. Hey guys, I want to take a quick break to thank you all for watching this video and talk about a bunch of new merch that we just added. It's all about the thunk. If you're interested in showing your support by purchasing this shirt, as well as a few others, be sure to visit the merch shelf located just below this video. Now, speaking of support, be sure to like, subscribe, and be sure to turn on all those notification bells so you're always alerted every time we make a new upload. All right, so we are finally driving the brand new 2022 Subaru WRX, and this is a very important model for Subaru because it is the only turbocharged all-wheel drive entry in the segment. Remember, this car competes with cars like the Civic Si, the Elantra N, the Volkswagen GTI. Those are all front-wheel drive vehicles, while the Subaru is all-wheel drive. And you have to remember, this is all-wheel drive, but it's also around the same price as a Civic Si, which is why it's a unique vehicle. So let's go ahead and see what the 0 to 60 performance is like in this new car here. Now, we only have the manuals to drive. I'll turn the traction control into its track setting. Oh, God. Now, it does require a shift to third, which is kind of similar to the new SI, but 6.5 seconds is a little sluggish, actually. We'll have to see if we can try that again, see if we can get a better time. But remember, the manual model is not, for 0 to 60 performance. Subaru's new performance transmission, which is their fancy term for CVT, is not available to drive at this program, so we'll have to drive it another time. I'm gonna try it one more time, though, and see if I can get a slightly better number without launching it quite so aggressively. It bogged pretty hard there. Also cuts power pretty abruptly when you hit the limiter. 6.47 there, which is a little bit quicker, like 0.1 quicker. So obviously it's faster than the SI that we drove earlier or last month, but this car has a lot more power, 71 more horsepower. I'll be curious to see what the performance transmission gets, the CVT, because that one, as much as we like to hate on CVT, Subaru says they worked hard on that new transmission to make it just considerably better. And it should obviously give you faster 0 to 60 performance. The WRXs have never been about that. They've been more about, of course, just giving you that all-weather grip, that excellent handling, the fact that you can basically drive this car in all kinds of conditions. Obviously, it's not like a sport utility vehicle, but because of the symmetrical all-wheel drive, which, by the way, their symmetrical all-wheel drive system appropriates power 50-50 in the manual transmission models. And then the automatic will apparently do 55 at the rear, 45 at the front. We're riding on these 18-inch Dunlop summer performance tires. The road is a little damp right now, so obviously we're gonna try to take it easy a little bit, but I'm noticing quite a few things. The manual does not have Subaru's SI drive, so we don't have any ability to adjust the steering response, or you can't change the dampers. That is going to be, of course, reserved for the GT trim. I am going to turn the traction control back on. I actually had the traction control in track mode earlier, which is a new mode this year that allows you to basically let the tail step out a little bit more. It'll reduce back on the intervention and let you have a little bit of fun. And then you can also shut it off completely if you press and hold that button a little bit longer. You have to access the track mode by coming to a full stop first and just pressing the stability control off button once. That's how you actually turn on the track mode. Now, sadly, as we get closer to a bunch of slow cars here, let's just talk about how the new WRX drives just in a more relaxed manner. Now, this vehicle has always been a little bit rough riding. Subaru actually says that they've made this vehicle a lot more comfortable this year. Although we're not driving the one with the new adaptive dampers, I am noticing the ride is pretty firm still. What do you think, Rob?
Compared to the last WRXs that I've been in, it feels a little bit better.
It definitely feels more comfortable, more polished, more refined, but it's still on the firmer side. The new SI, I want to say, rode a little bit better. This reminds me a lot of the Elantra N, though. The Elantra N also kind of rode a little firm, but that's kind of okay. It's what you expect in a vehicle like this.
It feels more planted, though.
It certainly does.
Especially on the highway.
Yeah, the structure is a lot more stiff. I think Subaru said they've increased torsional rigidity by almost 30% on this new global platform. This is the first WRX to be built off of their global platform, of course. And it's, makes a great first impression. I do wish the steering was a little heavier. It's a little too light for my taste. The manual transmission is very typical Subaru. The throws are actually pretty short. The clutch is a little bit numbed for me, though. I don't love the way it feels, but it's also a little bit on the heavier side. The SI is definitely the easier car to drive. Stick shift every day. This is a little bit more of a chore, but it's not horrible. If you guys are used to WRXs, you're gonna get into this and just know exactly, or this is gonna feel basically at home. In terms of the seats, these are the new Ultra Suede combination leather seats on the Limited, and they hold you in place pretty well, but the GT model is the one that has the Recaros. So again, another reason why you want to step it up to the GT, but if you guys want a manual, you can't get the manual on the GT, so that's something to keep in mind. In terms of noise, it's a little boomy in here, actually. I was surprised. The exhaust sounds pretty typical Subaru, but I did hear a fair amount of road noise in this vehicle, which it's a WRX. I'm not expecting it to be super refined.
That's part of the charm, though.
It is. It's part of the charm, and I think this is definitely doable for a daily driver. And it's pretty comparable to the Elantra N. The GTI is definitely going to be the most refined out of all the vehicles in the segment, but it's also going to be one of the most, subdued, and that's typically what Volkswagen has always been in the segment. Does this handle better than the new SI? I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to drive the cars back to back. I do think that the steering feel is kind of not a deal breaker for me, but I prefer it to be a little bit heavier feeling. The one thing that the WRX is really good at is visibility. You can see out of this car really well, from the thin pillars to even the fact that you've got this big hood scoop. It doesn't really intrude in my visibility that much. The view out of the back is good. The Subaru EyeSight driver assistance tech is not available on the manual. You can't get any of that stuff except for the blind spot monitoring. So you have to go for, again, CVT or get none of the automatic emergency braking or their adaptive cruise or lane keep assist, which I guess for enthusiasts who drive this car, that's going to be fine. You're going to not have a problem with that at all. I like the new steering wheel. It's a flat bottom design. It has nice 9-3 grips on it. And the gauge display, I do wish that Subaru had gone to a fully digital display, but that is pretty easy to use. You can put the turbo boost gauge there if you'd like, and then this bigger 11.6 inch screen is a huge upgrade over the 7-inch screen. But overall, I do think that it's very much just an evolution of the current generation WRX. Subarus, they've tweaked a couple of things here. The engine, I don't want to say it feels any faster to me. It feels pretty similar versus the last WRX, the 2-liter, because remember, they now went to a 2.4. In fact, Jason Fensky from Engineer Explain asked Subaru during the presentation, why did you guys go to a 2.4? And it has basically 3 more horsepower and the same torque. What's going on here? And they basically said that it simplified their engineering or their production because this 2.4 is the same one in the Ascent. It's been modified, of course, for this car.
Downshift a lot, though.
Yeah, I do have to downshift a lot because you have to wait for the turbo to build pressure. It actually has a fair amount of turbo lag down low. Now, Subaru did say they got rid of the rev hang, and I want to say yes, they did, but I kind of also wish that they added rev matching in this car, because now we just drove 2 competitors, the SI and the Elantra N, that has rev matching, and I think it would have been nice for Subaru to add that. The manual transmission essentially is the same manual that was in the previous generation. Fuel economy did go down slightly this year with the bigger engine, like 1 or 2 mpg. I'm not going to be able to test that right now, but I imagine they went to the 2.4 as well because this vehicle is going to be better for tuners. It's very under stress. It only makes 12 pounds of boost. So I imagine the tuners are going to turn the wick up. They're going to get closer to maybe over 20 pounds of boost, and this thing will be pushing over 350 horsepower. But I'll be curious to see what the next generation STI is going to be like. Subaru did not mention that vehicle at all. They also didn't have pricing available just yet, but this should come in around the same price or right between the Civic Si and the new Elantra N. So as always, Rob thinks he can do better than me 0 to 60, so let's go ahead and try it again, shall we? All right, yeah, 5.9 is a much more impressive time, so...
What was the win 7.7?
Good job for cracking the 6-second barrier, Rob. 5.68 with a very aggressive 5,000 clutch dump. But she can get faster though, at least.
Yeah, she didn't like it though. It felt very...
Yeah, I smell a little bit of clutch.
Sorry.
So I must admit, I have been to a lot of places in my line of work, but I have to say, Subaru brought us out to this beautiful place here in Point Arena to film the all-new 2022 WRX, which is ironic because I personally don't think this car is very beautiful, especially when you look at the rear end with that unfinished bumper. But of course, styling is all subjective. Let's talk about this car as a whole. As I expected from a WRX, it drives really well. It has a really wonderful engine. It has a decent shifter. It's got sticky tires. It has great handling. It has a pretty nice sound, although it's a little too quiet. I imagine owners are going to fix that later. The interior is also a huge upgrade with the bigger screen, the technology features in it, and I am actually really looking forward to trying out the WRX GT, which is the new top trim level that has the adaptive dampers, that has the Subaru Performance transmission as standard, and of course the Subaru EyeSight. The manual here is going to appeal to a lot of those traditional enthusiasts who don't like all that driver assistance tech, but they want the larger, nearly 12-inch infotainment system, which is nice. The manual shifter feels practically identical. In fact, this car was a very subtle evolution in terms of the previous generation. The design on the outside certainly looks different depending on from which angle you're looking at it. But really, you're going to get in this car, you're going to feel right at home because Subaru didn't change too many things, even though the platform underneath is an all-new look, and you also have that larger engine, which Subaru says the engine offers more flexibility out on the road. I didn't really notice that. I noticed that it pretty much has pretty similar acceleration, but I also think that a lot of owners are going to be tuning the crap out of this thing and giving it far more than the 12 PSI of boost pressure, which is partially the reason why I think they went with the larger 2.4-liter engine. But really, if you guys are looking to purchase the WRX, this car has always been popular because it's one of the more affordable options out there if you guys want all-wheel drive. All of its competitors like the Civic Si, the Hyundai Elantra N, and the Volkswagen GTI, those are all front-wheel drive. You have to go, of course, to the $44,000 Volkswagen Golf R to get all-wheel drive, which this car here, Subaru, unfortunately, was not ready to announce pricing as of yet during this filming. However, the current generation starts at around $27,500 for the base WRX. I'm going to estimate this car is probably going to be more expensive, maybe around $28,000, which is still around the same price as the new generation Civic Si. Now, of course, this limited grade model, if you build one now from the 2021 model, is around $32,000 to start. I'd say this one here, with options that it has, is probably around $35,000, $36,000 with destination, which puts it right in the same line as something like the Hyundai Elantra N, which is around $32,000 minus options. This car, remember, has a little bit less horsepower than the Elantra N, but it gives you all-wheel drive, which is something that a lot of people out there who live in crappy weather, not supposedly like this, are going to want with the all-wheel drive capability. But for around $35,000, I think it'd be a good deal. Subaru says that this car has been delayed a little bit in terms of getting to your actual dealership. They are starting production of the manual transmission model next month, while the automatic will be starting production in February, and you should expect to see these at your local Subaru dealership by sometime in March or April of next year. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2022 Subaru WRX. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.